Oh, whew, bright outside here in Florida. Hey, Shiny Crafty People, it's Tim Totten here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to show you how to take an old tie, like an old tie, and turn it into a fun case to put your sunglasses or other glasses into. Isn't that great? Great way to take old ties and turn them into a safe place to store your glasses. All right. You may have seen a previous video I made where I took a bunch of ties, like 18 or 20 of them, and turned it into this really nice apron, which of course is completely impractical, but it looked really pretty. But today I want to show you something much simpler and easier. And if you hang around for the video, I might even add in a way for you to use the leftover parts of the tie to make an extra piece for glasses. So why don't you join me down at the cutting table and I'll show you what we need to do to get started on this sweet, fun gift. So for this project, we're gonna need a couple things. We're gonna need some ties. I'll definitely need something to close it with, and I'm gonna use Velcro for mine. You could get one of those like little machines that put snaps in, but that's just an extra thing to buy, and so I don't have one. And not just because I don't wanna buy it, but also because I think it would be easier if you use stuff from your normal stash. So if you have one of those machines, definitely use that. You could also use a button and put in a buttonhole if you don't mind putting a buttonhole in, but I'm just gonna use Velcro, easy. For the Velcro, I will of course need some needle and thread and a thimble, probably, because I don't want to go through, there's one part I'll show you need that for. And I'll need a seam ripper, and that's for some very specific reasons. So let me show you what this is going to be for, because we have to prep our ties. So I'll get some of this stuff out of the way. Now on a tie, we're going to use this end section here. And on the back, you'll notice that the way that ties are put together, they're sort of open here at the bottom, but there's a tack that holds it all in. Now you'll notice the tack doesn't go through to the other side, but it is in several layers. So if I put my fingers in for many of these, specifically on this other one, sometimes that tack goes through more than just this top layer of fabric. So here it goes through and actually holds into the bottom. It's been stitched into here, which means I wouldn't be able to shove a pair of glasses in there. So I'm gonna have to take that particular part out. So I would use a seam ripper and pull this out. Now on this one, it actually doesn't go. I can put my fingers all the way through there, but this does get in the way. This actually is tacked through. So I would need to take that particular one out. And then we'll have to close up the other end somehow. So let me just use I'm gonna do it on this particular one that I wanna do, this one. And I will take off this tag, and I'm just going to go in and pop off those threads that are holding it down. So now I've opened that thread up, just using my seam ripper. It's a dull seam ripper for some reason. Now I wouldn't just go and rip this off, because you might really rip the fabric, especially if it's a nice tie. It might even be made of silk. It's some really nice material, so you don't want to mess it up if you can help it. And if it is, through several layers, it might rip several of those layers up. So now those parts are taken out, and I'll be able to reach in and go up and feel where those had gone through several layers. So now that separates that out. Now I want to go ahead and take this piece right here, that little thread out, because it's keeping me from being able to open this up more. So I will use the seam ripper there. It allows me to open that up. And then I will just pull as much of those threads out as I can. Get those threads out of there. And they're holding that. There we go. So you'll notice that it starts to come apart as we go up. We're going to turn this thing inside out and sew it back together. So we have to decide how long we want our section to be that we're going to put our glasses. And I know that I want to be able to put my glasses in, so I'll just use a pair of the glasses that I actually wear normally. We want to be able to push those in pretty far and still be able to fold over the end. So for me, I need to go at least from the end of the thing probably 13 inches on this to make a pair of eyeglass cases that'll flip closed. Now, you can treat this end very differently depending upon what you feel like doing. You might decide that you would rather just fold it over a couple times. So if you went to 13 inches and just went another inch, you could fold in half and fold in half. Or we can turn this thing inside out and stitch it together and make it a little nicer looking. So you get just a flat edge like you would like a pillow or something. And then we'll sew that all by turning it inside out. So I'm going to just cut it at 13.5 inches. And then we'll be able to go from there. And I'll show you what to go after we do that part. And it'll leave plenty of other material for us. So I'm going to take my my measuring device. It goes from 0 down here on this ruler all the way up to 24. But I'll just take the 13.5 mark and put it at the end of this, the point. So 13.5 comes down here at the point. And then I will just cut off at the other end of that. So now we've got our piece. Now I will go in and just finish taking the threads out of here that put this together. And that now opens all of that up. And we can go ahead and double check these pieces and parts. See where that still had gone through and tacked it in. Make sure it's open. So now we have that entire piece that is open. Now you'll notice the way this is built, they've created this sort of pocket here, and this piece of material goes in all the way to the bottom. It's a sort of a woven material. So I don't want that to go anywhere. I don't want it to leave. So I could either use a little spray adhesive to hold it in, or I'm just going to come tack it with a sewing machine right here at the end. And then I'll be able to flip and sew the rest of these pieces together. So what we'll do is we'll go over to the sewing machine and I'll tack those closed. And then we're going to take these pieces, and remember, we want to have these fold to each other because this came together like this. This one covered over. So before we go this far, I do want to show you something I need to talk about. Let me get a little closer to show you. This side is already folded and has a fold already in it, so it can show us where to sew along there. But this side over here does not. It's got part of a fold here, you'll because it's stitched in, but that's over the top, and I want those to really lay well together. So what can I do to make that work better? Well, what I can do is also, I know these two want to stitch together right at that line, right along that line. I could go in and mark that with an iron, fold it, and that would fold over. So what I'm going to do is take actually some pins, if I can find any. Here's some pins. And I'm just going to mark for myself where that should be on the other material. I'm just going to put a couple of simple points in here. And then we'll go to the iron and I'll show you what I mean by this. What I'm going to do with this after I've done it, because I want to retain some of this shape. So let's take that to the iron. All right, so like I said, I've already got one side that is folded. Easy. So I just need to fold the other side. So what I'm going to do is I will open this up and I will fold right along that edge where those pins are in. So it's real easy to see where that is. And in fact, because my board has a little bit of, it has a padding on it, I can actually fold along that and use the pin to stick back in. There we go. Stick in with the pin. And now I've got that piece that's going to be ironed. And I'll take my iron real easily, just use the point here to go right along there. Then I can take those pins out and give it a little more. I'm not trying to lose the part where it folds. Obviously, I want to keep that. And because we're using, remember, we're working on either silk or some other synthetic material, I want to make sure that I don't mess it up. Now, one of the fun things to know is when I put these together, and I will open them up this way, I'm going to pin it so right along this folded line on both sides. So I have to put those together and stitch them. So I'm going to find those two folds like that and put them together and put a pin all along that point. Now, you don't have to get this extensive if you don't want. You could use some stitch witchery, which is sort of like that, you know, material that stitches, that is iron-on, and you could just use that. But I'm going to go ahead and line these up and go to the sewing machine and sew down this entire stitched line. So I'm here at the sewing machine and I've got these pieces together, and I am going to, let me actually move this pin so it's sort of sideways that goes along. And now I'm going to stitch right along that folded line. Now, if you can't see it real well, you can go back and mark it, maybe with like a chalk pencil or something so you can see it, or a pen. And what I'm doing is just lining up, when I'm visually looking at it, I'm lining up that fold with this one on the other side that I put in. And it actually makes it pretty easy. It doesn't have to be super exact. This is a fun project. It's not meant to be real extremely difficult. Now, the other fun thing is this material is so thin that it's having no resistance with the sewing machine at all. It is really easy to sew together. And it's actually really easy for me to see the fold. It's hard for you to see it on a camera, but I so can see this fold that was stitched in, and it makes it so much easier. So then I just do a little bit of back tacking to make sure it stays there. I'll take my pins out, and then I'll show you here what happens. Oh, I never added this. I should do that right now. I meant to tack in this material. So if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know I've learned to embrace my mistakes. And one of them is that I didn't properly base this in to the material like it should have been previously. That's actually okay, because what I need to do is I need to take some pins and I'm going to fold this sort of backwards at the line that's already been, that was already naturally in the tie. So I will put a pin in that to get it together. Okay. Same thing on the other side. There was a natural seam, so I'll make sure that's handled. And then I need to make sure on the other side that we're flattening through and we're going to be fine where we sew across it. So it's in there. I feel comfortable with where it is. I'm going to make sure this is all in there. And I'm going to sew right across the end of this. Now you'll notice there's an extra white material, and that's because it's starting to pull out from the bottom a little bit, but I'm just going to stop that from happening by sewing across here. And I can sew across here because at the other end, we're going to turn the entire thing inside out through this opening at the end. So that's all nice and sewn flat. And so I'm going to go to the cutting table. I'll trim this off and flip this whole thing inside out and show you what it's going to look like. So here we are at the cutting table, and I'll just go ahead and trim this. You could do it with a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter like I'm doing. If you want to get really particular, you could come in and clip these edges. I don't think it's necessary. And now we'll turn the entire thing inside out this way. Now, if you're going to point these corners out, the corners we just made, don't use a pair of scissors or anything sharp. That would be a bad move. So now we flatten it back out, and we basically have a tie that the end has been put together. And look, we sewed all along that area, and it's ready for the next steps. Now I'm gonna go hit this with the iron real quick because I want it to be nice and flat, and then I'll be right back. All right, and here we go. I've just ironed it, and I realized something very interesting that should have been handled in advance, which is I really should have stitched this closed so that my glasses can't fall back into this hole right here. This needs to be closed. And so I am just gonna go ahead and whip stitch that together, and then I will show you what that looks like after I do that by hand. And well, I'm not gonna show you what it looks like. I'll just gonna do it, and then it'll be ready to go. But so you would wanna close this up. You can either put a stitch through it, and you would see it on the other side, so pick a matching fabric, or you do it with just a hand stitch. I'm gonna do that and then come right back. So I have stitched that closed in there. So now my glasses, I put them in, and I won't have to worry about them getting stuck when they come back out. Now I need to decide how far over this should fold. I kind of like the idea of it coming about to the center. That still gives me plenty of room where my glasses start about here and go down to the other end. But I like the idea of it being sort of a half sort of shape. So what I've got to do is decide where I'm going to put my Velcro. Obviously, now you could put a button on here and then build a buttonhole through here, and then you could button it over if you wanted to do that. That's perfectly fine. Or those snaps like I told you about, but I'm going to use Velcro. So I know I need Velcro right on there, and then I'm going to put the Velcro in this corner. So what I'm going to do is use my material and cut a couple of squares, just a 1-inch square of Velcro. And then that will go for me right here at an angle in that corner. And then the other side of the Velcro, so that was the hook. And Velcro is obviously is the brand name. So it's not exactly Velcro. This is actually hook and loop fastener, which is not the brand Velcro, which is a little more expensive. I use a generic brand. And then this is the hook, which means this is the crunchy side that has hooks, like almost like fish hooks. And the other side has the loop that gets grabbed by it. So I'll cut a 1-inch square of that. And then that will go also at an angle right down here. Now I'll have to hand stitch this one because this one I can use a machine for, but this one will be hand stitched. So I'm gonna go ahead and use a machine and put this one on, and then we'll hand stitch this one on, and we'll go from there. So to put this on by machine, I'm just gonna put it here in the corner and try to make my stitch look nice enough. It is a dark material, so I'm not really worried because the dark thread's not gonna be that visible on the other side, but it'll still be seen. So if I was giving this as a gift to somebody, I'd want them to think that I have decent skill as a sewer. So I'm just gonna try to be careful as I sew this on, so that what gets seen back there, even though it's not gonna be extremely visible, it still looks decent. You know, pair of scissors, just trim it up. Any loose threads. Now the other one I have to stitch on by hand, like I said. So I've got a needle and thread. I'm gonna walk you through that just a tiny bit. It is pretty far up in there if you think about where that is. And so I just need to be aware of how I'm doing that. And I'm gonna try just to go through the top layer of the fabric because I don't wanna catch that, remember that white stuff that's in there, that nice thick material. And remember, I have to go at an angle to put this in. So I will go in and just tack close. And I think I want to show you this a lot closer. So I'm going to go ahead and start my stitch inside of where, see how far in it's going to be? Inside. And I'm leaving that other needle in because I want to be able to see where I need to go. So I will just lock on that. And now I can cover over this, and I'll come back up through. Now you might need a thimble. It might be something you really want to have. I'll come back up through. Now you might want to use the softer material. I'm using the crunchy, the hook. You might want to put the loop through here, actually. And the more I think about it, I'm thinking that might be a better strategy to put the loop because it's softer and easier to stitch through. But that's a personal choice, you know? This is a lot harder material to stitch through. So that might be a good suggestion, is to put the loop there. Now remember, when you stitch this, you only want to stitch right through the top layer of fabric. So I'm constantly checking to make sure I haven't actually, and here's another reason why you shouldn't do the loop one here, or the hook one here. It grabs this thread constantly. So you've got to really pull and make sure it's not in the way. So that's another reason why you might want to use the loop on this side. It would be easier to hand stitch the loop than it is to stitch the hook material. Now I'm going to take that pin out now that I've got that sort of in place. And I check every once in a while to make sure I'm not going through both layers. So one of the ways you can do that is by pulling up and make sure it's literally separating rather than pulling the entire piece. So I'm going to finish stitching this on, and then I'll show you the final project. And here's the finished project. I mean, it seems so simple, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'll show you. You take the glasses. Your glasses just sort of go in the end there, and it closes shut. And there is a finished piece. It's a glasses case. One of the nice things I like about this is that you can take these this thing also, because it's made out of a silk or a tie, another tie. You can use, like many people do who wear ties, will use the tie to actually clean off your glasses. You could also take the leftover material. This is one I wanted to show you as a bonus, and open it all the way up here. Take all that thread out, and actually I'm going to pull that thread. You'll notice I got the end of the thread. I'm going to pull it all the way to the other end of the tie. And once you've done that, I'll snap it off there, take that thread out. Now it allows us to open up all of this material. You could flatten this material out, give it a nice serge or satin edge, and make yourself an extra piece that could be then stored inside your tie piece, and you'd have an extra nice little cloth to clean glasses with. See? All right, Shiny Crafty People, that is our glasses holder. I'll flip it there so you see what it looks like without glasses in it. Very nice little piece. And you then can, of course, store glasses in it. I'll show you. I take my glasses off here. Somebody puts their glasses in it to store them. Oh. Fold it down. They get a nice little carrier for their glasses when they put them either into a purse or a bag or something else, store them in their car or something. And they can also clean the glasses with the tie, or you can make them an extra piece, like I said. So that is this simple project to make as gifts for people out of old ties, a way for them to hold on to ties maybe that they've loved, and something to give as a lovely gift to people if you have a bunch of extra ties. All right, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel, and until next time, stay crafty. Bye for now. All right, now I have 45 more ties. How many pairs of glasses do I have?